was appointed as one of the moderators of this session. The other moderators could make it to Bucharest. So now it's up to my dictatorial skills in order to make this more interactive. So in order to do that, we thought of several tools that we would use, including the fact that who doesn't engage with our Mentimeter, you would see, might not have lunch. So be very prepared to answer. But before we get there, I'll just introduce you a bit our panelists and our topic, and then we'll try to move on. So I'm quite happy that we have a line of panelists from different countries and with very different backgrounds, because they can show us a lot of the challenges and problems with online content. And I'll start from left to right, just to present them briefly, because afterwards they have the chance to talk a bit about themselves, about what they do and what do they think about the key topic, challenges of online content. So we'll have Olga Kyryliuk from Ukraine, from the influencer platform, and she also works on the freedom of expression issues, on other digital rights. We'll have Marcin Olender from Google. He is based in Poland, and he works with digital policies and other things at Google. And then we have Cristian Bulumac, who is here representing his position as the digital advisor with the Greens European Free Alliance in the European Parliament, meaning that he's not a member of the European Parliament, and he doesn't want to be because he's not candidating, but he works on digital issues at the European Parliament, so he knows everything about this. Then we'll have Tanja Maksić, who joins us from Serbia, but she works with journalists in the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network. And last but definitely not least, we have Florin Grozea. And if you're wondering what MOCAPP means, look on his website, because he explains it much better than I do. It's an influencer platform, and he can tell us about that. But Florin is also well-known Romanian author, composer, content creator, working with other content creators right now, and also former owner of an online platform. So he has various perspectives he can bring on the table. But before I'll ask each of them to make an introductory statement on all of this. I told you that we'll use the Mentimeter. But before we do that, I'll have a few questions for you. And you'll just raise your hand to be easier. The first question is quite stupid, so don't worry about it. The others are much smarter. So who in this room have ever posted something online in a public forum? So meaning Google, Facebook, whatever. Okay, so like everyone, or someone did not understand my question? Okay, leave your hands up, please, leave your hands up. And tell us how many of you, keep your hand up, if your content has been deleted, blocked, not accepted, moderated, or otherwise changed by, I don't know, the owner of the platform. So like almost everyone, no, okay, a few hands went down, okay, thank you. And from those up, keep your hands up if you think that the decision was not correct. I mean, your content should have been there. Okay, and we see just one in the panel, and at least 5 or 6. Okay, if you want to share that experience with us and how did you felt it and what did you do, I think that would be great. So we'll start with you, actually. So who, from the people that stood with your hand up, said, okay, we have one example there that want to share their experience. Go ahead, and Sorina will help you with the microphone. You can say names of the companies, people, you know, we're not afraid of that here. So.
Hello, I'm Hivi, I'm from Greece. I used to do a radio show in our local university radio station, and I really like music. I used to, in my radio shows, mix up everything all together, and there was this show of mine that I mixed something by Beatles, and I did a mashup with other clips, other musical clips, and then after 2 years, I decided to share it on YouTube. but then after like less than 20 hours, it went down because of a song of Beatles. But it was like so few seconds, and I don't know how they.
And what did you do about it?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
So YouTube won. Okay. Thank you. Do you have other examples? If you don't want to take your own example, you can use the phrase, "I have a friend who has a friend that did that." So don't worry about it. Yes, we have another example there and another one at the same table afterwards.
I post a comment about some shorts that I took from Decathlon, market for sport things, and they didn't publish it because it was not convenient. It was my opinion. Maybe it's bad about them, but it's an opinion about shorts. They didn't publish it. On the other hand, I may mention I was surprised that Booking.com still publishing my comment about a place where I was in Croatia. Because after I make a comment on Booking.com, the host from there have to be really tough to still stay on Booking.com. So if you follow me on Booking.com, you will see some interesting comments about places.
Okay, and you get some affiliate revenue out of that. Very good idea. Okay, and we have one more example. Please, Sorina, come back to the table here in the back, and then we'll start also the discussion. We'll give the opportunity to the panelists to tell us their experience.
Thank you. I'll keep it short. So basically, it all started with me having a very bad experience at one of the venues, a restaurant, to be honest, to be clear, to be frank. And I decided to vent my grievances, let's say, at what they call it, the Google rating system. Yes, you can Google review this restaurant. And well, I just spoke what I thought, and the funny and the interesting thing is that the comment is still technically up. I can see it, but they for some reason removed it for other people to see. That's one thing, and the other one, it's not included in the rating. So they don't. So they didn't use my review and my rating when calculating the overall score.
Okay.
So what is the point of it? Me writing it. So it was kind of pointless.
Interesting. Maybe you should contact the Google Support Center. They have a
I
big
did.
staff answering all your emails in 24 hours. Or there will be a new law asking for that. It's always unclear to me. I was kidding about that.
Okay.
Thank you for the example. I don't know exactly.
I have many more, but okay, let's just. Thanks.
Okay, and we have one more. Okay, let's take one more. Maybe some positive things about Google. No, we have it in the panel, so.
I know that you are expecting something regarding governments. My case was, one of the cases was that ex-Prime Minister of Kosovo was showing on Facebook his agreement with Montenegro for border agreement. And I said that do the transparency. Only 2 minutes and they delete it. So that's my experience.
So he deleted his own post?
He or his staff.
Okay. Okay, interesting.
I just asked the transparency.
Okay, thank you. And then, okay, maybe the last one? Sorry? You want to continue? Yeah, go ahead. But wait for the microphone to come to you. So we have one more experience.
Okay.
Sorry, no. Two more.
Okay.
Okay, then we go there and then there.
Actually, since we talk about the hotels and restaurants, I've actually been 2 years ago as a summer job working in a hotel. So I will show the experience of an employee seeing the reviews. And I saw that there is a trick that they're doing, especially in Booking.com. They see the person that is coming in, And when they see that there is something suspicious, they're putting maybe a pending or like pin it. And when they see that that person has actually put a very bad comment, then you are going to complain to the Booking.com that that person actually did something bad, so it makes sense that they put a bad comment because they were wrong themselves. So this is how they justify, and the rating system is not going to be counted towards the overall. So there are tricks. And they know that there is very important because people are mostly likely to see the comments, and they're doing their best to erase all the bad comments. So.
Thank you, and thank you for showing it also the other part of the story, so how you deal as a content owner or creator or hotel owner in that case. And there was a last comment also at that table, if still interested.
Hello. Okay. So it was a choreography uploaded on YouTube. So it wasn't totally unfair because it had the music of a Korean group, but it wasn't only the music. So it was not exactly a copy, but it was not exactly unfair to block the content.
Okay, so the music was from a Korean company.
The music was
but
from a group.
The choreography was original, you say?
Yeah, that's exactly.
Okay. Thank you. So we have complicated problems with complicated solutions, maybe. And let's go now to the first question on Mentimeter, because I thought that the title would have been misleading, so I try maybe just clarify it. And you can go on Menti and use that code, and you can answer what is the biggest challenge of online content, and while you answer, we start discussing about it. So the biggest challenge of online content can be misinformation or disinformation, or if you never use this term, just understand by this, fake news, hate speech, terrorist propaganda, copyright infringement, none. Just consider that internet is a new medium and all of these already exists. And I have no idea, which is why you came here, to have an idea about it. Or you don't know what to answer. So with this, and while you answer this, and you will see the results live, I'll ask first Cristian to start the discussion and to explain you what are the policy discussions at the European level. What do they want to regulate in online content? And what they will succeed in regulating? And maximum 5 minutes, please.
Okay. I think it took like 3 years to finalize the copyright file, and you want to resume everything in 5 minutes. And it was not the only big file of the European, let's say, mandate in the last 5 years. But let's start with the copyright. It was a long overdue reform. We needed to do something because, as you said, internet is a new medium. Not all the rules that apply to the brick and mortar could also apply directly to the internet, so we needed to see what is the difference and how can we update the rules. I would say that from my point of view, the result is a little bit unfortunate, especially in what concerns the takedown of content and the proactive measures. The word filter is nowhere in the copyright directive, but somehow we speak about filtering. So that, I would say, it was not the brightest decision ever, but the Parliament will disagree with me, so this is the status. We will see how the implementation will happen in practice. We did tackle a little bit the hotels and restaurants review issue in the platform to business regulation, adding more transparency obligations for the platforms, in a way easing the deals between the service providers and the platforms. However, that regulation is more about transparency, showing what is happening, probably preparing the field for a future review which will bring more hard regulation if the data will prove it's needed. We recently have finished the terrorism content discussion, where we already had a directive on what terrorism is, and now we have the promotion of terrorism. How do we treat with that content? Unlike the copyright, we no longer filter everything, because in the end, hiding the issue is not solving the issue. The debate there was very interesting because it went into the 1 hour debate. Most of the harm happens, regardless if it's terrorist content, harmful content, or whatever other type of content in the first hour since it's posted. Unfortunately, the initiator of the text chose the wrong hour, because they said people should take down content in 1 hour from the notification, but not that notification can come 1 week later. So we still speak about 1 hour, but the wrong hour. However, some measures were taken, and I think the current text is a big step forward. We discussed the fake news dilemma since propaganda existed forever. We still don't have a solution. The debate is very much ongoing, and everybody is invited to contribute to that. But what all these debates brought were the fact that we still have an issue with the role of intermediaries. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about these intermediaries. If a creator, a content creator, regardless if it's a news article, if it's a lie, if it is a scientific article, just uploads something on the internet on its own website and waits for the people to see it, nothing will happen. Content will just sit on the internet. That's how the internet functions. However, not long will pass, and a teeny-beeny spider will come and take the content, put it in a database, create an index, and then start distributing the content through that database. Well, this is a problem because nowadays we no longer have content sorted in a chronological order. We have an algorithm deciding where the content should be placed on a page, if the content is channeled to certain users, or if the content just is being hidden somehow. And who does that? Everybody will say it's an algorithm. Nobody intervenes there, but somebody wrote that algorithm. Somebody is the owner of the algorithm, and somebody is the owner of the platform, of the intermediary. And that happens on social media, happens on search, happens on all kinds of platforms. What happened in the classical brick and mortar? You would write a piece of text, lie about somebody, and then call it a news article and distribute it through a kiosk selling newspapers. The kiosk owner would sort the newspapers and put the ones they want to sell higher or in a more visible place and hide others. So they will still influence the way it's distributed. The same thing happened now online. But the question is, why do the owner does that? And there is, the answer, my answer would be the owner does that for profit. They do it because generating more interaction, they are able to sell more advertisement. So it's, from the point of view of the intermediary, a profit issue. From the point of view of the content creator, it's a distribution issue. They want to make their content reach a larger number of people. From the point of view of the consumer, it's a choice, it's a limited choice, because now the content that you can see if you access a platform is the one that the platform decides. Should we regulate that? Currently in the ECommerce Directive, and that's the next debate, the debate coming, we say that intermediaries who do not interfere with the content are in, let's say, safe harbor situation. They should not be responsible. They should not be liable. But the question is, what do we do if the intermediary also intervenes? Should we apply the media rules about lying or presenting facts in a, let's say, not so true way? Or should we find a new category, a third category? The distributors who intervene in the way the content is distributed. And this is the debate for the next 5 years in the European sphere.
Thank you. You quite managed to fit them all in 6 minutes, which is remarkable. But with this, I'll go on the idea of the content creators, and I'll ask Tanja and then Florin to talk from their own perspective. Tanja from the journalist perspective, and how the journalists are seeing their product being pushed through several platforms, and especially we discussed it before about the Facebook test that happened in Serbia. I think it would be really interesting to explain it for the audience here as well.
Thank you. You have all greetings from Balkan Investigative Reporting Network. Just a small disclosure. We are a network of investigative reporting portals, and we are active in 8 countries in the Balkans. And mostly our products are actually based online, so you see that we're quite interested in this topic. But what I wanted just to paint a small picture about our position. The Facebook experiment that Bogdan mentioned actually took place in 2017 in 6 countries in the world, including Serbia. What Facebook did was actually they separated news feed into main feed, where all of your friends' posts could be visible, and news feeds where all your pages would be. Automatically, pages would get less visibility, and it had tremendous impact on online media, and I'm guessing online businesses as well in Serbia, because their visibility of their posts dropped for like 40% or even more. The remedy was to actually pay more for ads. Then your post would be back to main feed, and then you would reach your target audience. And that's one issue of problems that we're dealing with. The other issue of problems that we're dealing with is actually comes from our own governments. They are very fast learning and mastering the skill how to, let's put it, how to control the flow on information online. And I'm fearing that they're learning this using the Russian and China model. Just to give you some examples, our ruling party has the largest bot team in Serbia. They have hired several thousands of people who are regularly monitoring interactions on Twitter, posting comments upon directive, commenting below news articles, effectively disrupting the normal flow of public debate. Another issue is that we have legal allowance for them to intercept electronic communications, meaning that sources, our journalistic sources, could be uncovered. Also, the latest news that we have is that they are working with a Chinese company Huawei, who is installing face recognition camera in Belgrade and larger cities in Serbia, as they say, for the traffic purposes. But you clearly see the potential for misuse of this information, especially if they are stored in private company and we have no clear information about what are they doing with all this information. So basically, if you have the complicated landscape of the internet and complicated landscape in the entire society, I mean, how can we win in this situation? How can we make the content that is important, that is publicly relevant, how can we make it more robust, more visible, more sustainable? So this is the questions that we are constantly dealing with on a daily basis. I don't, of course, have all the answers, but I think we can talk about them a little bit more as we continue. I would, of course, talk about. I will stop here, and then maybe we can.
Okay, thank you. You can come back, and people will wait for your answers, because you know the question was not just rhetorical, it was also provocative.
Yeah. Hopefully.
What are the solutions? Florin, what is your opinion about what is happening, and how are the content creators and the artists dealing with the online environment? Do they see piracy or do business opportunity?
Listening to you, I realized that I'm the least smart from this stage, and also coming from a softer zone, because I'm coming from showbiz, and I'm a former artist and composer, and then as an entrepreneur in showbiz, I see or I seek the opportunities that the new platforms are launching more than the problems that we have. So if 10 years ago we were trying to use high five, the old social network showbiz like singers and models and vloggers and so on, are more obsessed about the opportunities that new apps and new platforms and new functions are coming with, and not focusing on piracy and so on, because I think that the content creators, bloggers, vloggers, artists, singers, bands, and so on, influencers, they need to go where the people are going. And if the people are on YouTube, and in Romania, YouTube is one of the, maybe the best, maybe the biggest content consumption platform.
People would disagree with you. Facebook has 9 million accounts in Romania, so, and I'm not promoting them, I don't have one.
Okay, Facebook and YouTube. The point is that the artist and also the entrepreneur from showbiz, they need to be there. Okay, we don't like everything that Google and of course Facebook are doing, but we are always searching for the opportunities of the new platforms. Because 15 years ago, we were talking a lot of piracy and copyright infringement and so on, but the labels and the content creators that move faster in adopting the new trends were the ones who benefit the most. Not the content creators who win about the situation and went to, I don't know, to the NGOs to protect them and so on. So I think that, in my opinion, if we ask Romanian artists and Romanian content creators, they really don't care about the problems, because they are eager and they want to benefit from the opportunities, and that's maybe that's a Romanian thing. We need to survive, and to survive, we don't have the time to complain about the death of the CD or the copyright infringements. We need to be there where the public is, and if the public, the fans, the consumers are using Facebook, we will be there. If they are not using Facebook, and in Romania the teens and the young millennials are switching to Instagram, we don't have time to complain about that. Let's go to Instagram. We don't like the feed, the changing in algorithm about Instagram, but there are our fans and our consumers, and we need to be there. So I think that's not the smartest answer, but this is the truth in my industry. If the European law will be in our Romanian law, will be included. We will deal with it, and we will find solutions to get there.
But this is a very positive answer from your side.
I'm an idealist.
And yeah, and we know that. I mean, some of us still listen to the songs that you created, so we know that.
I'm the positive guy in the room.
The positive side. But still, my negative part of me needs to intervene here and to make a follow-up question. If the Romanian artists do not care about those things, why still content that is being reused by others, such as the case with the Korean song? I'll get that example because it was mentioned by someone. is being taken down. Why do we still have discussion about the new copyright directive and how the platforms are killing the artists and are destroying their business?
I think that's a known fact that Romanian pop artists are very known, are very popular in Europe and in the rest of the world because of their speed to adopt new technologies. Of course, a lot of them steal, so they borrow from other, get inspired for other from other artists and let's say cultures, but when the algorithm and the matching ID system that YouTube have get in place, I see that the artists, even those that have inspired from others, I see artists that they just switch. And now they understand that we cannot use even 2 seconds of others' work, and I see them finding their way and in the new environment with the new laws and the new rules, they are thriving, and I don't see that in maybe in, let's say, Austria or in maybe in Hungary. They are a more conservative showbiz industry, and that's why they don't have any big hit in European music scene. But our guys are very flexible, and they are finding their way out. And that's maybe one thing that we in Romania, we are good at, finding a way out even in the worst situations.
Thank you. And maybe other people from the room will have other experience after we do the tour. Maybe in other countries you have different experience with your own YouTubers, or maybe in your country you cannot block via YouTube. I don't know. Maybe this is not allowed for your nationals. But continuing on the idea of challenges of online content, you see the results here on the slide. So most people in the room that had the courage to answer the Mentimeter, and that will be provided food at the end of this panel, think that misinformation and disinformation is the biggest challenge of online content. So with this, it looks like a good moment to ask Olga, how do you see the issue of misinformation and disinformation as a big challenge in Ukraine? Or maybe that's not the biggest challenge and there are other issues that are being more openly in the media. I mean, you had elections recently, so probably the experience of the electoral process was also something that in the online area was very active, let's say.
Thank you, Bogdan. You did it faster than I was thinking to do that, because I was looking also on the screen and comparing the results. I was thinking that it's not only the majority of the people who are here in the room are thinking that this is misinformation and disinformation that are the biggest challenges, but also our government is pretty sure that this is the biggest challenge for the information environment within the country, because for us, it's not only the problem of the online content, it's also the problem of blocking the access to the whole online resources that we can't access a number of them starting since 2017 up till now. And to be honest, we don't know how the policy will be changing after the elections, because indeed, as you mentioned it very correctly, the whole presidential campaign was very successful due to using the new media, and it was really a new trend. We never had that before, and it showed that it could be really very successful. And from the statements that the newly elected president was making still before he was elected to his post, He was saying that the previous policy that was adopted and promoted by the government, meaning the blocking of the resources in Ukraine, he was not very much in favor of that, and he was saying that it did not bring those practical results to which this policy was really aimed at. And this is, I think, also the biggest challenge, because when the government is trying to implement some policies, it's really looking forward these policies, and they really think about the practical effects of these policies, because let's say since 2017 we don't have access to quite a number of Russian resources, but it doesn't mean that people don't use them at all. Like people started just to use VPNs and other means that still allow them to use those search engines, those social networks that have been blocked. But also what is interesting that for the government itself, and here I would agree with the Florin, that it's not only about the threats but also about the opportunities. And for the government, when they usually try to position online space as a huge threat to, in our case, for example, to national security. But I was recalling in my mind how, like, the previous government came to power, and it was also exactly starting from the Facebook post and from tweeting. So they used this opportunity to come to power, to make people come to the streets for the revolution that happened in 2014. But now they claim that this same online resources, that they position the biggest threat to the national security. And when it was just starting, when they were saying that it's only about Russian resources because we are in the state of conflict with Russia, then many even civil society activists they were supporting this argument. They were saying, like, indeed, the national security is a very logical argument to follow and to agree with the state. But I think it was just about a month ago that the representative of the State Security Service made a statement saying that, okay, we are done with social network of Contacti, but now Facebook and Twitter, they are also positioning the same threat, because also some part of the users moved to these social platforms, and so now they are trying to have the same kind of activities and the same kind of spreading the same information over those platforms. And this is what we were telling, that if you support this logic of the government, then you will end up in a very difficult situation, because the government will never stop saying that, okay, we block just this and we stop here. It's a very slippery slope. It's like it's just starting, and then you can't control what the government is blocking again and again. So, like, now, if it's now referring to Facebook, I don't know where we will end up, or where we may end up after this. So.
Just a short follow-up. So basically, the new president said that internet blocking doesn't work,
yes,
and he wants to repeal it.
He said, yes, he said it didn't give that practical effect it was expected to give, and he said that they would analyze the whole situation, and if they find out that this is not that big threat as it was supposed to be, then probably they would cancel these restrictive measures. But at this point, we don't know what will be exact policies in this field.
Okay, thank you.
Bogdan, let's take a minute to discuss the results. And if I may, I see that we have a problem with hate speech. That means we have very angry people. Okay, we have a problem with terrorist propaganda, so we have more angry people. Copyright infringement is that we have a problem with teeth. Yeah? Theft. Okay, thank you. But what problem everybody is saying that we have is with misinformation and disinformation. And as a positive and optimistic guy, I said that we can change that. We can inform and educate people to change that misinformation and disinformation. I don't know how to get to angry people and to be less angry, and also I don't know how to convince people not to steal. But if we look at the results, I think that more information, more school courses and lessons about internet and about privacy and about copyright. We need them. We need that.
Yeah, that's great, because I actually didn't show them the question on the main method, but that's the next one. So we can go to the next one now, because the next one was, and I'll ask you to answer this and maybe to comment on this after Marcin also takes over, is what is the acceptable solution for tackling these online challenges? And blocking is one of the solutions. Notice and take down was another solution. Do nothing, so maybe to just self-regulate. Education of online users. Other solution at the browser level, or of course the famous I don't know. It's acceptable not to know what is the perfect solution at this point. So if you go on menti.com and use that code, you will see all the options, not only the two that are appearing on the screen right now. So probably there will be more diverse opinion. But while you answer, I'll ask Marcin to tell us the truth about Google in the end. No? So
in 5 minutes, please.
So in 5 minutes, just please provide us with your algorithmic decision in providing the results of the content. Why do you take content down on YouTube? How content ID works, and all the other problems.
Not a problem, Bogdan. Just I will be done in 3 minutes. Actually, I was just picking up from what Florin said. And actually the results, I think, confirm this. And this is very positive in my view, that the answer to misinformation is not less information. It's more information, just the good one, and promoting the good one. So thanks for pointing that out, Florin, and thank you all for being positive about this, because unfortunately a lot of talk right now is centered around blocking, taking down, removing. This is the kind of trend right now that we're seeing in all sorts of files, be it copyright, terrorist, propaganda, hate speech, etc., etc. And we are indeed I will not answer the question that you posed. I'm sorry.
Not this time. Next time.
Next time. But maybe I'll try to, in a little bit, in a very short, concise way. I'll try to put where we stand in all of this, and the very short answer is in the middle. Florin said we are not happy with everything that Google or YouTube does, and guess what? No one is. Right, but that's just the joy and glory of being in the middle of everything, that you have competing interests from both sides, and it's impossible to satisfy everybody, because we have from the one side, of course, governments, such as including governments which are not always very enthusiastic about freedom of speech, pushing us in the direction of removing. There's the copyright holders, which are less progressive than Florin and his friends from Romania, who have indeed really, it's a really amazing story about Romania and how successful Romanian artists are on the international sphere, far more than any other Central Eastern European country, including Poland, which is twice the size. So really well done there. So, and I'm always amazed. It's not even only musical artists. The biggest, by an order of 4, I think, channel in the whole Central Eastern Europe on YouTube comes from Romania as well. So really there is something happening in Romania which is quite extraordinary. So the adoption rate is really great. So there's a less progressive creative industry groups that push for more stringent rules on copyright, which actually they succeeded in securing in the European Union. Let's see how that actually plays out in practice. But there's of course people and governments blaming the internet for terrorism. Like if you ask me, you know, if watching a video on YouTube makes you a terrorist, I don't think that happens that way. It's just an easy way out of the problem of why do we have terrorism. It's because of the internet. Well, no, it isn't. But at least that gives some people the sense that they are actually tackling the problem, which is not a problem. It's just the sign of a problem. The problem lies elsewhere. But it's difficult to integrate, for example, minorities in society, but much more difficult than applying some rule to an internet company which says you have to remove something in an hour, which I have to unfortunately disagree with Cristian, a little bit scary. Maybe I did not understand correctly what you meant by, but if you did mean that the online companies should remove terrorist propaganda, whatever that is, by the way, it's an interesting always question, what is terrorist propaganda, what isn't, within an hour of posting, then you're putting basically us, Facebook and the other, in the role of someone who basically censors the internet without any control or supervision, because if you add, which they do, substantive penalties for not removing content, then you will get, there's incentive, an easy incentive to remove everything as it appears, because otherwise you will pay up. So I personally think, and my job at Google isn't the first job in internet regulation that I've been doing, and so I've been consistent in thinking that this way of moving forward is not a good way, because obviously even the notice and takedown system as we have now incentivizes online intermediaries to remove, because there's no penalty for over removals. So it's obvious that if, in case of doubt, there will always be the choice to remove rather than stay up, unless there's a strong conviction on the side of the company. And I think we have pushed back quite often in different markets, trying to uphold, at least in certain cases, the freedom of speech or artistic freedom. We have mentioned the cases of mashups or sampling or using bits or transformative uses of parts of music in someone else's work, or choreography, etc., etc. It's a valid discussion of how much of this kind of borrowing should be allowed before it's called not inspiration but theft. But if you put this into the hands of the algorithm, which it needs to be, as Cristian said, there's no word filter in the new directive, but at the scale that the internet operates, there's no other way of doing this, because you'll have to put 5 million people just watching these videos. Probably that's not going to be enough. So completely without algorithmic automatic filters, it's impossible. So there's no way of the algorithm catching or understanding that this particular few seconds of the Beatles song is used in a legally allowed way or isn't. So is it fair use or isn't? This still will probably demand in the at least foreseeable future human oversight. So if I could just give some advice to the lady whose example we listened to in the beginning, and any other people whose content has been blocked in similar circumstances on YouTube, that there is an appeals process, right? So just because someone claims, and obviously it's not also YouTube coming up with the idea itself, it's the copyright owner supplying us with the Beatles song and asking us to remove the content wherever we find it, right? So, but it is possible to appeal this decision and claiming fair use specifically, hence putting us exactly in the middle position between intermediating between the copyright holder and the person who wants to make this use of the copyrighted material. Am I out of time already?
And just to be curious on that, is it a possibility to appeal in every language where the YouTube platform is, or just in English?
If the platform is localized, yeah, you can.
So you can do it in Romanian, because YouTube. Yeah. Okay.
You can.
We'll do a test. So
sure.
This SEEDIG thing will be taken down, because it's being broadcasted on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then we'll try to see in how many minutes we bring it up. And don't use your phone.
We can sing a song or something. There's a lot of funny anecdotes about these things.
Florin to sing. He sings much better.
My favorite anecdote on this was that there was a copyright conference, I think in Amsterdam, and there's a famous professor, Bentley, who was arguing about more protection for sports transmissions. And he illustrated it with a clip of a football match, and it got taken down because the Premier League, filed this. So it was funny.
Okay, thank you. So now Liverpool for us. With this, we'll open the stage. So if anyone wants to comment, I see at least one person already wanting to jump in this discussion. While you're looking at the results, while the microphone is getting to here in front, and looking at the results, I'm always amazed that most of the time people think that education is the answer, but in policy discussion, this is rarely the case. And I'm puzzled by that. So if you can answer that, that's perfect. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm Tanja Pavleska. I come from Josef Stefan Institute from Slovenia. It's a research institute, so I can say that I represent academia. And my question is the following. So each of the stakeholders are complaining about misinformation and disinformation being the main challenge online. However, it not only pertains, but it's even more exacerbated by the internet. So the problem is there, and someone is lying. So who is lying? If misinformation is the challenge, and we're all complaining that we mind it, who is lying? God forbid, or we are all lying. And my question, can you connect for me? We already know how the players and stakeholders that don't like misinformation are connected, but how are the stakeholders who benefit from misinformation connected? Because if there is misinformation, not only one is benefiting from it. So, for example, governments, influencers, platforms, where are they in the loop of those who benefit from misinformation?
Very good question. And while you process this information, I have to admit I've been also lying. You will all get food afterwards, so it doesn't matter if you answer that or not. So I'm the first one to be blamed. So who wants to try to answer that? Cristian?
Well, the problem with the word lying, it assumes that somebody tells the truth, and somebody has to check. A ministry of truth is never a good idea. And especially if we think that the intermediaries, the online platforms, should decide who is right and who is wrong, that should be an absolute no-go. Privatized law enforcement or privatized truth is never something that we should go to. However, the governments are, of course, benefiting. They want to promote their agenda, and that's not called propaganda, that's called information. If you are a political player, then it's called an electoral campaign. If you are a company, it's called advertisement, because you are just trying to sell your product. So truth, it's a very fluid issue. And I think the only solution is the filter of the rational mind. It's only the person, the one reading the information, who has to decide. If we are just trying to cover things because we find them inconvenient, even if it's freedom of speech or even if indeed some content is harmful, we are not solving the issues. So we have to go a little bit back to the basics and avoid regulating. This is why I also agreed with the speakers that education is the first line of defense. Then if something really breaks the law and is not only inconvenient, then we can have measures, as we have for terrorist content and as we have for other types of harmful content. So you've just opened the biggest debate ever, and I'm not sure anybody found the solution yet, or the definite solution, because it's a mix. Some people are doing it for the money. We have the recent example of the Trump campaign, where Eastern European people were just doing it for the money. It's a very convenient way of doing it. Some people were looking at the sources of financing. So now we have online social media platforms, let's not name them, looking at the sources of funding and only allowing political campaigning if you disclose the sources. However, it's only one company doing that, maybe two, but there are a lot of other advertisers who are using smaller platforms, making money out of it, promoting products, but in the same time encouraging interaction with fake news or fake content. I think that at the European level we don't have a solution, we only have a debate, and probably we should continue debating until we find the solution.
Thank you. We have two more questions there, but also, and one there, but also someone from online participation, from remote participation. There is also a question, or I misunderstood it? Yes. And then to the table there, and then there.
We have a question from Ucha Seturi from ISOC, Georgia. The question is on EU e-commerce directive implementation perspectives in Southeastern European countries. Who will make the decision on blocking and removing of harmful content and give order to the host providers and intermediaries?
Question mark. Okay. Good. Such a simple question. Who wants to answer about what is happening now and maybe what is being up for discussion, at least in the EU, next time?
Me again.
Marcin, you can also answer what is happening now. So,
I think, but
yeah.
Any sort of like application of EU laws to, I think this is to Cristian.
Yeah, well, the answer is the authorities, and that's I would say, the big point of the debate today. It should always be an authority or somebody that you can complain against in a court of law. It should not be somebody based on terms and conditions that decides which content goes away and which content stays. That was, I would say, the general rule until now, even if somebody are looking for an easy way out of and moving this kind of decision in other directions. The terrorism content directive is still not finished. We are still debating, but the parliament position is still that there should be an authority analyzing if the content fulfills some criteria and informing either the intermediary or the hosting provider.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what is Google doing now as in implementation of the e-commerce directive? Maybe you can talk a bit.
Well, the e-commerce directive is a very general framework, right? It covers all sorts of services, from telecoms to YouTube, right? So it's how much time do I have? So basically, the basic premise is quite simple, but that's why it's also followed from the DMCA, right? So an intermediary of any sort is not liable for whatever it carries as long as it's not aware that this particular piece of data, information, is illegal, right? So that's the basic premise we were built upon. So if there's any, and the way that it receives information about the illegality of this is immaterial so far, at least as far as the e-commerce directive goes. So it doesn't matter if it comes from within, without, from the authorities, or just any user. That's why flagging something on YouTube as infringing copyright leads to the blocking of this particular piece of information, unless of course it's manifestly untrue, or it's quite visible that it's a false piece of information. But then again, then if the service provider decides to keep it up, which we do in certain cases. In search, for example, we process, I don't remember exactly, I think it's about 600 million content like link removals per year. And we remove 90, perhaps 8 or something % of these, but that means a couple of million of these we refuse, right? Which is, you may say it's a small percentage, but then again, a good few million are obviously manifestly wrong, and we reject them. And so it's quite a big scale. But that's our risk. If someone then decides to sue us under the e-commerce directive, this is our risk that we take to leave this stuff up. So I don't know if this answers the question. On the misinformation issue, I really love this discussion because it's so philosophical. We're talking with Tanja that I really like this philosophy stuff. But trying to translate this philosophical discussion about the nature of truth into hard law is terribly risky. And I see also in certain countries and certain groups the fact if something is true or untrue varies so terribly depending on the political convictions of people. It's like, how are we supposed to weed these, like, to say what's no? I just think it's a completely wrong direction.
Okay, thank you. Let's take 2 questions from there, because there were 2 hands raised, and then we'll go on the left.
Yes, so I would like to take this chance here that also the SEEDIG Youth School given me, among with other students, to express my wish I think it's the best place to say this, to express this, that, and since the Mentimeter's answers were mostly on educating the online creators, and as an online content creator, especially music, I would like to express my wish to educate people about licenses. And I'm very glad that you came up with fair use, and I think that one of the best solutions is to inform people about the existence of licenses, about the different kinds of licenses, Creative Commons, fair use, that I would like to be noted. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question or comment?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the discussion. And this is the question for Mr. Marcin Olender, if I pronounce it correctly. You mentioned that let's say, a cure or solution to disinformation and misinformation is more information, not less. Theoretically, it may work. It is a possible solution. But my question is that what do you think may be the role of education, that is raising the awareness in people, as well as improving their critical thinking skills, as well as the problem of time. There's actually a concept of informational overload. There is so much information that you can get. So when you hear a misinformation or disinformation, you may believe it or may not. If somebody actually believes that kind of information, he or she may not have enough time to see other kind of information which disapproves it. So this is the actual problem with all this, let's say, a whole heap of information that you have to find truth, grains of truth in it. So do you think that this can be solved with education, with critical thinking skills? I don't know if there may be other possibilities to solve the time issue, because again, most people work, most people don't have that much time to see all that kind of information. Thank you.
And before answering this, to make it a bit more complicated, we go on the next question on menti.com, and the question, actually not the question, it's a statement, which says Facebook and Google are the monopolies of our communication. And the only 4 answers you may give to that is, yes, this is a big problem. Yes, but it's better than the national regulation, so better than the national government. No, we have other options at hand. I'm too afraid of answering this, or I don't know, in brackets, these companies. So you have the full options to answer that. And now you may answer at least.
Yes.
In the context of Google being a monopoly.
Yes, provocative Bogdan. To your question, again, thank you for the philosophical or sociological more questions this time. Unfortunately or fortunately, maybe fortunately, we are not yet responsible for the educational systems of nation states. And I don't believe we will be anytime soon, but obviously the answer to your question is yes. I mean, and this is, I'm not sure about any other countries. I'm only familiar with the Polish educational system, but it is sadly terribly out of tune with today's realities. It does not teach these soft skills of critical thinking, etc., which are absolutely necessary to sift through what you just mentioned, the enormous overload of information. So for the young people, of course, incorporating this into the educational system is a must. For the people who have already finished their education, now that's more difficult. I remember kind of quarreling with a lot of my friends who share things on Facebook. They're educated people in general and believe themselves to be smart and etc. And they share indiscriminately without fact-checking, for example, memes on Facebook. It's a common practice. Add to this just the way the human mind works, the confirmation bias. We call it now the buzzword is filter bubbles, but actually it is ourselves doing it to ourselves, right? Because people are more likely to believe something they agree with and that's just what happens. So there's a lot of problems, and you're right, that the fact that there's so much information makes it difficult. But I don't think there is any way, as I think Cristian said, a ministry of truth, you know, how are we going to do this? So giving people the tools to access information and the education to be able to assess these, I think is the only way. It's a difficult way, but it's the only way. If you look at Google News, for example, at one point we introduced this kind of learn more button that kind of unfolds a topic into the various sources that have written about it. So you can access on the given issue a number of sources and compare but you need to be inclined to do that, right? You have to have A, time, B, I think it's more of a question of just some curiosity to check the facts. So there's no easy answers, but just saying, hey, this is impossible, let's introduce the Ministry of Truth, I don't think there's that's an option.
Yeah. Please, Tanja.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of sentences to this. From the perspective of media, I think the education is also quite important, because if you learn skills of critical thinking and analyzing media content, then you would know how to recognize the false media or the media who are spreading false information and those who are credible ones that are following professional and ethical standards. And in the long run, I think that media should clearly understand that this is their niche for long-term sustainability. Because if you build trust within your audience that you're a credible source of information, then at some point you could say to people, okay, now please help us with the funding. So this, I mean, the education is of course not the panacea. It requires a lot of resources and a long-term engagement of governments, of non-governmental actors, media as well. But I think that it's the way forward.
That's what The Guardian is doing, right? It's building a community of supporters.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, one way to fight misinformation is to have more but credible sources, credible information.
Not just quantity.
Done in professional, journalistic manner, respecting all professional and ethical standards. Yeah.
And before letting Florin and Cristian to also answer that, maybe to add on the negative side on it, this is not happening. The critical thinking is not being taught generally throughout Europe.
Yeah.
The European Union, although they talk about fake news and solution as education, have not put a lot of money into this. I mean, I think they have some like 3 million euros for 28 member states. This is a joke. So yeah, this is a solution, but it's not happening.
Yeah, well, I can tell you from Serbian example is that the government officials and professional actors outside the government are actually taking some initial steps in developing curricula, putting them into schools from primary schools to secondary schools and further. Then there are a lot of NGOs that are active in this field. So these are baby steps, of course. This is just initial steps, but in the long run and in some synergies and coordination of the activities, I think that we can that we can move forward. And I'm actually glad that we're now talking about disinformation or misinformation, because the initial phrase was fake news. I mean, if it's fake, it's not news. So it's in a way, it was diminishing the role of media and undermining the trust that people should have in professional media if you call it fake news. No, it's not news, it's disinformation, it's misinformation. So I'm glad that we're shifting this paradigm, even if even in our ordinary day-to-day talks. Yeah.
Thank you, Florin.
In a positive side, people are educating themselves and they are organizing themselves, and I think that you can see everywhere where Facebook is. Where Facebook is present in that country, that people now, the majority of them, they are understanding that there are problems with privacy and the data you share. Because if you look like maybe 5 years ago on Facebook, you will see people that they are saying they are leaving their homes and they are going to vacation and what they are eating and babies' photos, their babies' photos and so on. But now, if you are looking at what people are sharing about their lives, they will see less information. Yeah.
Maybe in your bubble.
No?
Maybe just in your bubble. Who knows what happens with all the millions of users? I mean, only Facebook could tell us, and they are not here to tell us.
Yeah, but no, they tell us. They tell us, Mark Zuckerberg said last week that there will be more focus on groups of friends and groups of families, like bigger families, and passions and niche and so on, and less news feed. So that's something that people push to Facebook. They said enough of this disinformation, enough of this news feed. We want more connection with people that really care about us, or really they are close with us. So I think that the users are learning, and I think that authorities are moving way slower than the people are educating themselves. Okay. And we are talking about 5 years. 5 years in the life of a society is like nothing.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Interesting that the scenario that you're portraying sounds like Google Plus, which was shut down recently by Google. But anyway, we'll see.
But good luck to Facebook.
Yeah.
Cristian. Yeah, but yes, but Google Plus was ahead of their times, and also something that was, in my opinion, pushed from a big player. Now, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook needs to do changes because people push those changes, because it's in their interest to be relevant, and to be relevant nowadays in social media means something different that 5 years or 10 years ago. So I think I'm a positive guy in this stage.
Cristian, and then we have 2 questions there. I didn't forget, just to wrap up this idea, this part of the discussion.
Well, I keep hearing about the people who should do something, and but honestly, I think we should not need a PhD in order to open our phone and use an app and be able to critically think about stuff, being Kant or I don't know which philosopher. The problem is that the moment we buy a phone, we are being pushed into an ecosystem where you have apps and you have to use those apps, and those apps are serving you with a certain type of content. So it's a little bit like one crazy guy throwing a rock into the water and 10 wise guys trying to take it out. Well, it looks like somebody threw the rock into the water, and it's not us, it's the platforms. And then everybody now has to think which is the problem. And the problem is that being profit-driven and channeling content only based on the profit, it creates problems. And now you are asking the whole society to solve these problems. One way is the feedback that the users are giving, and then maybe they move to another platform. But the question about maybe in the case of Facebook and Google is no longer there, because we are speaking about monopolies. And based on the number of users in Europe and the United States, we are not counting China, we are speaking about a situation when we have captive users. And you are asking the users to educate themselves. You are asking the member states or other states to invest in educating the users because somebody else created a problem. I don't think it's fair. I think the intermediary, the platforms, should also do something, and it's not about finding the truth, but getting involved into educating users more than clicking a button or using a like or sharing or tweaking their privacy settings just because privacy was, I'm trying to find the polite word for it, not so good in the beginning.
Okay, very, very controversial one, and people would like to react, but we'll take more questions from the audience. I see at least 4 people, so let's take, there are 3 there in the back at the table, so, and Liana first, and then just pass the mic.
Okay.
So to get all the questions.
Liana Petsova-Ilieska, Center for Internet Development and Good Governance, North Macedonia. I'm just going to tackle a couple of issues that you have mentioned, and that is like sustainability of media, professionalization of media, Guardian building a community, and disinformation, misinformation. So a question. If the truth and the truthful information is something that we are all looking for, why don't we are looking for this as a public good? So is the truthful information a public good, like clear water, clear information? And who is responsible for it? Thank you.
Thank you. And the question? Go ahead.
So before going into the content and to the regulation, I wanted to go a few steps back into the property or ownership itself. Because when we had property centuries ago, it was something physical that we had, that we can touch at these hours. And now that term has evolved into this intellectual property right. But I think just the term has evolved, but we have still the same correlation that that thing is ours. But we are seeing that it's not touchable. It's something that we have released and everybody can see. So I think that we don't just, because the platform changes, we cannot keep those old concepts of property or ownership. We should also try to adapt to what is happening, actually. And when we are saying that somebody is actually pirating something or that somebody is taking this kind of property, I don't think that we are really looking into it, like how the platform is working. The platform itself was something open, to be accessible. It's not something that somebody has to have it, to really own it. And to be honest, if it's the problem of finances, most of the influencers and content creators have many more opportunities to finance their content than they used to have in the offline world. Because now an influencer can have affiliate programs, they can have the merch, they can have collaboration with other channels in YouTube, for example. They can have many, many more things that they weren't even as a concept in the offline world. And I think when I see the Article 13 that they're saying that they have to take down those replicas or maybe memes or whatever, I don't see that where is the benefit. I don't see even the benefit of the creator her or himself. Because I also see like the trend nowadays that there is no #1 Billboard song that hasn't been memed or even been put into those challenges. You don't see that. And it's actually because of those things that the people are doing that making it so popular. So I don't see that people are actually being injured by those kind of replicas or those creations, but they're actually fostering even more and they're making it even more profitable for people. Because after all, the content that's being there is to share and nothing more. And to go into the content itself, without questioning the Article 13, which in my opinion I think it's wrong, I would also say that people tend to go and pirate. People tend to say fake news. They used to do that in the offline world, and we know that even 100 years ago with Pulitzer and the first newspapers in New York and everything, where the content was not to just show the news, but the media was the news itself. They were creating their own things and no one could fact check it. But nowadays with internet, we know that something is fake because we can go on the internet online, we can see if something is fake or not. So we cannot say that this platform has fostered fake news or whatever. This actually is the best thing because you can go and fact check. The thing is that people are being so lazy that they're not going into the critical thing and they're taking for granted everything that is being there. People tend to give fake news. I even have friends that when I have conversations, they tend to oversize the conversation. They tend to make it more beautiful or more scary or whatever. So people tend to do that. It's in our human nature, but we should be critical and we should also not block the things because the internet was open itself in the first place and we should keep it. And we just need to change ourselves because the platform is new, so we should reincarnate ourselves, I believe. So.
Thank you.
I love you.
Very interesting comment. Florin might want to answer more than that. Another question at the same table, and then we come in front.
Yeah, very active table. I have a question for all the participants in the debate. Why do you think the people are so scared of Facebook and Google, since we see that so many of them are afraid of answering this? Well, in fact, you don't have to answer it, because I rigged the vote. It's a fake. And this is just a demonstration to show you how rigging something online and the trust can influence the public debate. I just ask you a question about the non-existing problem, because I read the vote. But that is not the problem of the fake news. And, that, and even the ignorance or maybe not enough critical thinking is not the problem. The problem is we lost the values. We lost, you know, once maybe you knew, I trust this source, but you don't have that today. A few days ago, you saw a reporter of CNN showing rebelled military forces in Venezuela going over people and saying, look, government is going over its own people on CNN. That's a fake news. So question for Google is, did they block that news? It's a fake news. It was proven as a fake news. Did they block it? But it came from CNN. So question is, we need to have and know what are the reputable sources. Question, the solution is not in a Ministry of Truth or not in a censorship and easy removal. We need to fix our value system and know who to trust. The problem is we do not know who to trust anymore, and that's why people will believe anything, including my rigged questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And please come with the microphone here in front to Frederick. Before that, I need to explain my dictatorial skills here. So basically, I gave you one question, actually one statement, and just 5 simple answers, which you might answer truthfully or not truthfully, and we need to accept this game. Also, it could be that none of these answers are correct, actually. So I actually created the fake news dilemma. There is also one question here in front to Frederick. But while you're coming, I'll ask Olga to intervene. She wanted also to comment something that has been said beforehand, and
to comment on comments.
And also on the comments here. And then Dusha. Yep.
So the question
well,
first.
I'm honored to be called Frederick now. No worries. Just also for us, I think it's important to fact check. Just to, as an information rather than a question, we have done a study for 47 countries on blocking, filtering and takedown of internet content. I think that's important to recall. It's available online, it's being updated. I think that's interesting as an information. Second, indeed, the fake news item was launched by Donald Trump, basically. And we, as Council of Europe, we try to decipher it and introduce the concept of disinformation, malinformation, and misinformation based on levels of truth and levels of intention, intentionality to harm, basically, behind it. And that document, that report is also online. It was the basis for the high-level group of the European Commission afterwards to work on the issue of disinformation. So that is there, it's a good document. Third, because there are quite a number of issues related to the role of internet intermediaries, and there is a recommendation of the Council of Europe on the Committee of Ministers on the role of internet intermediaries. I fully share your views that it is not for the internet intermediaries to be judge and party. It is important that the state authorities and the judicial authorities keep their role. It is not for them to hand it over to private business. I think that's important. Media and information literacy, yes, it's maybe only a drop in the ocean, but it's the only drop in the ocean. Well, not the only, but at least an important drop in the ocean. We have to all, an international institution such as UNESCO, but also Council of Europe, work very much on it and providing tools. What we also done is to promote fact-checking institutions, and I think that is important. The media themselves, it's not a political party, not any other body, but the media themselves have to ensure that the facts that they're getting are corrected and are reviewed. And I strongly believe, and that's maybe the positive note, we're the ignorant generation, I'm sorry to say. We're the ignorant generation. I strongly believe that next generations who have grown up with these new tools will have a different opinion and a different attitude and approach to these technologies. That's my positive belief, Bogdan.
Thank you. I don't know if you're talking about your generation, my generation, or the future generation, but that's another debate. But I'll ask first the panelists to try to answer a bit the questions that were raised, and then we take the final comments. I have one there. I will not mention names because I'll be wrong again. One here and one from the moderation team. Yep.
So I will start with what Liliana was asking about whether we can treat the truth as the public good. I don't think it's an interesting suggestion, but I don't think it can lead us somewhere, because what is your truth might be my false. We tend to believe different things, and we agree with something which we are like already have in our minds. And in general, I think this is very much overused, this concept of misinformation, because we used to label everything misinformation which we don't agree with, and especially in the political environment, it's used hugely, because like for the people who have the powers, who have the authority, it's very easy to say this is misinformation, so you don't have to believe that, but the piece of information that we are sharing from their side, this is truth, because this is more convenient information for us. So I don't think even like the education itself would help, and I don't think this is the only problem, because our society, I would not say that we are ignorant generation, but rather we are the generation of the like even the society of consumption. We don't want to spend extra minute just to check another source which is not taking that much or is not taking that much effort, but we don't do that. And I sometimes really enjoy looking when sometimes like some event is happening or some like political thing, and how people in Facebook are divided among those who are like in my friends feed, how they are divided without even checking the sources. But then you see like how people just are being grouping between themselves without having like really logic rational behind why they tend to believe this particular idea. And this is because of we have lots of information, but for example in my country when the government is saying like we have lots of misinformation, but there is very little information provided back, let's say, in national language, or which is being broadcasted abroad in other languages from what the government believes to be true. So just it's about us, because for me, I think if I want to check, I would check. If I want to believe, I would believe. It's not about government to block. It's not about online platform to show me other types of information. It's all about our own choice.
Okay.
If I could just follow up, there's even because Olga said that you know, the government not providing information creates a void. Okay, that's a problem, but the worst problem, I think David Kay actually, the UN Special Rapporteur, pointed to the fact that actually governments are often the main source of misinformation, disinformation, and how do we deal with that one? That's an interesting choice. We have some programs like on YouTube, not everywhere, this is active in the US, some topics which we found to be undoubtedly untrue and the source of a lot of propaganda, say the flat earth theory as a good example. We provide them on YouTube next to the video that is kind of advocates that the earth is flat. We provide a link to Wikipedia to make it easy for people to fact check. But again, we will not remove that video because, hey, if someone is willing to, you know, entertain this theory, who are we to take that down? I really like the intervention of the gentleman in the back, and I absolutely agree with everything that he said about the current copyright issues. The most damaging thing for the creator right now is to be unknown. I mean, that is really the worst thing that can happen for an artist. And actually piracy, if you look at the successful artists, the one that make the most money, they are also pirated the most. So I know correlation isn't causation, but obviously piracy doesn't seem to hurt people's earnings, quite the opposite. Actually, some studies, I personally disagree with them, but I've read studies that find a positive correlation between piracy and earnings, because actually they explained it by just free publicity, by pirating. So if someone is unknown, that's absolutely the worst thing. And the fact-checking, of course, thank you for that. And we actually do support a number of fact-checking organizations as well. They're very interesting. And also we learn, because, okay, we're talking about mass education of the population on critical media literacy, but actually we run workshops and education for journalists. And it is, I'm sorry to say that, Tanja, but it's scary how often uninformed they are. about exactly the tools there are for fact checking. You know, how many times major news outlets ran completely, you know, pictures that were taken like 2 years ago. To, you know, a lot of simple mistakes that could be avoided with just a simple fact check. So, a lot to be done. We are dropping a little drop in that ocean, but obviously a lot more to be done there. And are we going to comment on that?
Yeah,
poll?
Also that, but let's leave that for the last round.
Dessert.
Yeah, dessert, or before dessert. Please, one here, Andrea, and on my moderation. Yes.
Je suis Frédéric.
Bonjour, Frédéric.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. You can be whoever you want to be, even a dog.
I have only one comment. So there is one day in the year when everybody, offline, online, are practicing critical thinking and fact-checking. It's April Fool's Day. So if we can manage to do this the whole year, so to make April Fools the whole year, maybe people will change the way they are thinking.
Good idea. We will declare that as part of the SEEDIG results to make the 1st of April every day of the year. And we have here two comments. One from Andrea, one from the online team.
And congratulations. I have a question for the panel, and then if I have time, a comment. The question is, if you consider Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, a platform, a media producer, a content producer, or just a mean? Because I think it helps us also understanding they could be their role. And on touch to that, and going into what has been mentioned, the shortcomings of thinking that media literacy in education will solve the problems is that the way that those tools are designed and the economic model underneath, it's basically based on your engagement and you spending as much time as possible. Therefore, claiming that the better you are informed, you go yourself and you have the best options, it kind of runs short when you see that, and we have seen, we've been proved that for how much hard they try, the algorithms behind those tools, they actually loop you in. They work with your subconscious and dopamine loop. And for how smart you think you are, I don't think we are so smart to outsmart those very powerful tools. And what we have seen now is just the beginning. I really recommend you to watch the last I/O speech conference from last night from Google, and to read today's editorial from Sundar Pichai, your CEO, on New York Times about privacy and how Google sees the future, and to reflect and think whether what is coming up now and the powerful and the pervasiveness is still something that we are tackling with what we have seen so far. So I don't know if I'm being super clear, but otherwise I'll go too long. But my question to all of you is to consider whether we still can label those tools as mere platforms that just convey information, or if they have some more. Thank you.
But just a methodological comment. Google is a company. There are different products. So YouTube is a platform. Search, not really. Blogger is different. So we should kind of stick to which exactly product of Google, because Google, it's just a company, just to make things more precise, which actually relates to your statement as well.
Okay, and
can I just add to that?
Just to take the last question from the online participation.
So I want to talk as online participation, but myself, Harris.
For me, okay.
I want to comment that if I had to answer to the Mentimeter, I would ask, yes, it is a problem that big companies have the monopoly, but we have other options in hand. And by not using the other options, we are helping them keep the monopoly and create this monopoly. I would also want to ask how we can solve this problem when raising awareness and education, we need to use the internet, and these two companies, they are rule the internet in a way. And also I want to add to Daniel, and I want to ask, what are these big companies taking advantage of the lack of critical thinking? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll leave that question at the end to be even funnier. Tanja, and then, but this is the final round.
I just
so
had a small comment regarding the question that you have. Actually, this is something that I've been thinking about quite a lot from these shoes, from this perspective that we are talking about. We are posting one type of content on our web pages, and then we have to tweak it. We have to adjust it for Facebook, and we have to adjust it for Twitter. So basically, we use them as publishing platforms, and they are somehow, in a way, content creators as we are. So the notion of media, I think, is quite stretchy in this sense. And thanks to this technology that is enabling us to be or either. I mean, can be. I mean, sometimes they can be hosting platforms if your website is down or something like that. So it's the notion of their specific role is actually quite stretchy, I think, as well as the notion of media today. If you are asked today, what do you consider media being? What would you say? Or who is today a journalist?
There are definitions from the Council of Europe, really good actually.
Yeah, but I mean, as we all can participate in this public sphere, and we can all actually do a good for public information. If I, as a private person, am digging some corruption case or something like that, and I'm sharing it on my social platforms, so I am doing something good for my society. So yeah, and just one more clarification about what Marcin said about journalists and their skills and their. I quite agree with you. I think that that we also need to constantly uphold and re-question our journalistic and ethical standards, because they're always with new technologies, with new platforms, with new obligations that we also need to see where we stand as a profession and how can we do better in these circumstances. And of course we always have to educate, because nowadays you have completely new profiles in newsrooms. You have to have journalists who are good at digital forensics, so you can check if someone slipped you with the wrong or false document, or fact checkers. Yeah, so this is constantly evolving, and we as a profession have to uphold our standards and question them all the time.
Thank you. Cristian?
I think we can no longer operate with the same concepts for media and content creators. We have a different player on the market, and we have to find a different name for it, because it's, from my point of view, clearly not content creators. However, they are no longer a neutral intermediary. They are not only transporting information from one point to another, they are shaping the way information arrives at that final consumer, I would say. And this is a problem, because let's speak about another topic. We say self-driving cars. If a self-driving car hits a pedestrian, or we have the trolley problem, who is the responsible? If in this case a person sees a lot of videos about flying without wings from the 10th floor, who is responsible? It's the algorithm, it's the company, the platform is the one providing those videos. I think that there is a certain degree of responsibility for those shaping the content that arrives to us, even if they are not the content creators. So we need to find a third category or a fourth or whatever it is, but not fit them into the classical categories, because this is what internet does, changes the society. We have new activities, we need new notions, and probably we need new regulation for that.
Thank you. And last comment from Florin, no? You agree also on the influencers and on their opportunities in the digital age right now, right?
I agree with Cristian. I think that there is a new world that we are living in, and we are not, we cannot continue to put the notions in what those words mean for us last century. But also I'm positive and I'm optimistic that we get smarter every day. And I think that Facebook and Google are not monopolies. Maybe are monopolies here in Europe if you want, but if you go to China, you will see that they are irrelevant there. Or if you go in social networks, social network zone in like Russia, you will see that there are other players there. Twitter is not so big here, but it's very big and is very influential in North America and so on. I think that we have alternatives, and I think that we are smart, and in medium and long term we will figure it out.
Okay, thank you. Very positive. Olga, would you like to add something for the end, and then Marcin, and then I'll have 3 short remarks. Positive ones.
From everything that Andrea mentioned, I think it's definitely for me not the content creator and not the media in its classical understanding. I would from this list I would rather go for the platform option, but whatever we call it, I think it's more important to talk about the roles and responsibilities that that these companies are playing, because they are really, let's say, multifunctional in what they are doing with our brains, with our lives. So it's more about like making some limits, but also like not over making these limits, because I think the governments in many cases are just trying to shift the responsibility to these companies.
Okay. Marcin?
I guess this is the last moment to
I'll have the last one.
No, but to address your provocative statement, there was just one which I kind of already replied when commenting on Andrea. Google is a company that has different tools. So if you and usually people do mean search, it is a different kind of service than Facebook. It's basically not a push but a pull service. It does not shape what you see, because you mostly shape. Of course, there are certain ways which we, of course, influence what comes up, but obviously it's a different kind of service. So when talking about platforms, people tend to just throw them all in one bin, but they are different. But they are different. They operate in a different way. They have different functions, and they have different levels of influence on what appears in front of it. So YouTube, I would agree, is a similar in a way, sort of. It does have a feed which is algorithmically powered, etc., etc. So it's a little bit more like Facebook, but search definitely isn't. And just one. Okay, let's just end it there.
Okay, thank you. Before we wrap up, 3 short information from my side. I take advantage of the fact of not being anymore the moderator to answering something that Andrea was mentioning. I really would urge everyone to reconsider if they should listen to Google and Facebook on privacy, maybe on how to make money, yes, how to create big company, yes, but on privacy I would really look much more on the Council of Europe experience, and Patrick, formerly known as Frederick, can tell you more information about it if you need that. The second point I've been wanting to mention it, I tried to post on Facebook, but it didn't work. There is a sister organization of ours from Poland called Panopticon, who has started yesterday a strategic litigation against Facebook. It's actually called Sin versus Facebook, where they have sued Facebook for breaching the freedom of expression of a Facebook page by an NGO that was taken down without warning and without any reason, and they couldn't put it back. So they sued Facebook in Poland, I think, for this. So that would be a very interesting case on freedom of expression. And last, no disinformation, we have lunch now. And thank you, our panel.